By the way, the U.S. Capitol is called the People's House. So why were Democrats so offended and frightened that people entered it on January 6? Melodrama queen Nancy Pelosi tried to make it a media circus and called it an insurrection to get the most sympathy political mileage out of it. Will it take another Pearl Harbor to wake the sleeping giant? Our country is being groomed. But for what? More people in this country must start noticing that in recent years, God, America, conservative and traditional values, our history, founding principles, our international reputation, culture in general and white people in particular, our educational system, the information distribution system, monetary system, healthcare system, economy, security, truth, justice, and the American way have increasingly become a punching bag for a specific category of people. An explanation for all this will be presented in more detail as we go. But much of it is being carried out by and through the mass media, and that may be why blogger Alex Jones named his YouTube channel InfoWars. Because the corporate media have become nothing more than professional liars and shills for the left. Thus, he, and everybody like him, had to be silenced by the big tech oligarchs, operating as the brown shirt police force of the Democrat Party while they held total power over the federal government, who support the far left because they didn't like Jones's conservative voice criticizing them or telling the truth about them. He was kicked off of their platforms under the aegis of being private companies, and, thus, constitutional guarantees of freedom of speech did not apply. If they hadn't used that as an excuse, they'd have found another way. Silencing the opposition is what happens today to people in Vladimir Putin's Russia, where he jails, tortures, kills, or exiles his political opponents. Such extremes are beginning to happen here. But if we don't make a wise and timely course correction, it could become America's next reality. It is part of a plan being carried out by our enemies, foreign and domestic. There is already plenty of momentum behind it when the Department of Justice, the FBI, the intelligence agencies, the IRS all have become weaponized against Donald Trump and his conservative base. Think about it. Is there a dramatic difference between Putin when he confiscates an oppositionist's property, businesses, livelihood, or liberty for the crime of criticizing him and or what he called and insists on all Russians calling the war on Ukraine his special operation versus firing people who oppose Biden's orders? Okay, Putin is Russian and Biden is quasi-American. But that's a distinction without a difference. Even our own political leaders are suspect, not the least of which would be Jerry Nadler, DNY, who while serving as chairman of the House Judiciary Committee is credited with having told Congressman Greg Stoib, RFL, something that would upset most if not all Christians if they became aware of it. After Congressman Stoib made an impassioned speech on the floor of the House of Representatives in which he referenced God, Nadler had the unmitigated audacity to say to him, "Mr. Stoib, what any religious tradition described as God's will is no concern of this Congress. Perhaps God is of no concern to Mr. Nadler and or the rest of the congressional Democrats, especially the hardcore Marxists. But God still concerns 200 million ordinary folks in the U.S. population who identify as Christians. That must mean the Democrats in the House of Representatives do not agree with the masses in this nation. So exactly who is it they are representing? Who are they really working for? And what is it they are working toward? And who are these people that are so anti-God, anti-America, anti-Constitution, anti-common sense, and anti-tradition? What do they want and why? The way we have always done things in America has never been a pariah. It has been a model for the rest of the world for more than 100 years and made us the richest, most powerful, most influential nation in history. So why are they trying to fix something that isn't broken? Why did a 7th grade girl in Missouri come home from school telling her mom she no longer wanted to be white? What has to happen in our schools to convince a young white girl she should be ashamed of her ethnicity? There is a reason, and it is but one of the fronts of the war on America. Before we press on, let's take a lesson from history many people may not know or don't remember. In 1913, a far-left organization known as the Fabian Society had a member, Israel Cohen, who allegedly published a book, opinion editorial or magazine commentary that said something which casts a lot of light on the mindset of this girl from Missouri, and not only explains the origin of her feelings, but much of the racial division we in the 21st century must deal with. In other words, it also connects to current events, some statements made more than 100 years ago, and shows how long leftists have been firing across our bow. Cohen is said to have written,
"We must realize that our party's most powerful weapon is racial tension. By propounding into the consciousness of the dark races that for centuries have been oppressed by the whites, we can mold them to the program of the Communist Party."
He went on to say,
"While inflaming the Negro minority against the whites, we will instill in the whites a guilt complex for the exploitation of the Negroes. We will aid the Negroes to rise to prominence in every walk of life, in the professions, and in the world of sports and entertainment. With this prestige, the Negroes will be able to intermarry with the whites and begin a process which will deliver America to our cause."
The guilt complex he talked about is what we know today simply as white guilt, which has no basis in fact, and yet the Marxists seek to impose a guilty feeling on today's white people because of past ills done to black people more than a century and a half ago by other people who were long gone generations ago, and they do so while trying to forget that black people also owned and bred slaves. In other words, it's another race-related phrase bantered about these days by leftists with an agenda, but which largely originated before the majority of us was born.